Hi,
Sir.
good. Hi, who do we have on panel today? Let's see. Okay, so we have Dr. Jas Ryat, we have Annika Pampal as my co-host, Carl Seelig, Daniel Ferreira, Steve Papermaster, and Mark Terrell. Mark, let me start with you. If you would be so kind as to introduce yourself, and then we'll bring everybody else on board.
Hello, I'm Mark Terrell. Thank you very much, and great to be with you all. I am currently working in a company called Pavessa, which is a new telemedicine company starting off in the world of COVID-19 testing. And my background is technology, and I'm also the founder of Davos as well.
Terrific. Dr. Ryat, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Jaspreet Ryat. I'm an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon. I work out of Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, where we got dumped on with a lot of snow just yesterday, so we're just digging out still. I work out of Ocular Health Center. I also have started and co-founded a venture capitalist incubator called iStart, and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Can we have Daniel, if we, actually, you know what, Steve, could you give us an introduction to you first? That would be terrific.
Thank you. Happy to join. My name is Steve Papermaster. I'm the chairman and CEO of NanoCures. NanoCures is a company with a range of vaccine and therapeutic technology for pathogen detection, protection, including COVID-19 and variants. We have a platform with a COVID-19 vaccine that is getting ready to scale globally. Primary focus is low and middle income countries. And it's a very, very safe, highly efficacious vaccine that is a subunit protein vaccine versus mRNA or adenovirus. We also have an alternate delivery platform that drives towards self-administration without a shot, moving towards intranasal and oral delivery. My background briefly is several decades in building healthcare, medical, biotech, and technology companies, as well as serving in the US White House cabinet as a senior advisor to President George W. Bush on science, technology, and healthcare for both terms.
Thank you so much. Now, Daniel Ferreira, if I could have you please give us a brief introduction about you and your company. Daniel, you're muted.
My name is Daniel Ferrara. I'm the CEO of WellCare Today. We specialize in population health management for the senior population, having provided those programs for a number of the larger managed care organizations. And our particular focus is in the wearable market, embedding our software in smartwatches to transform that device into a new generation medical alert device that could also capture and monitor the healthcare of those users and provide that data to caregivers as well as remote patient monitoring platforms.
Right, and I think that part of the reason we wanted you on this panel is because we think that when we talk about telemedicine, of course, the original concept being telephone medicine, but we are so far beyond that at this point, where we now look at this as remote medicine, remote monitoring, and of course, wearable devices being a very, very critical and important part of that. So tell us a little bit about how you see the future of wearables in remote monitoring and in holistic medicine in general.
Well, we see smartwatches leading the way in this category. Think of iPhone. When that came on board, it replaced many separate devices. Well, what we've done is embedded our software into smartphones, particularly Samsung smartwatches, to transform that into a medical alert device that captures information. If you think about it, that product now will replace medical alert pendants, a Fitbit, a pulse ox, ECG technology, BMI scales, blood pressure cuffs, and we anticipate in 2023 to add to that group non-invasive glucose monitoring. So the ability to easily capture that information on seniors that wear this product, and then provide that in detailed graphs to caregivers who are monitoring mom or dad, and then to send that to existing remote patient monitoring platforms provides those physicians or clinicians with additional data to better assess the patient that they're monitoring. And that's where we see the market going. With the smartwatches being able to have cellular technology as part of the feature set, as well as Wi-Fi, the communication is quick and it's open, it's everywhere. And we see 5G, which is around the corner, making this even a more real-time device. If someone is having some cardiac problems and the watch picks it up and immediately contacts 911, provides the location of that individual, so that in the golden hour, that patient could be monitored and assessed by clinicians so that they don't die and reduce mortality. With the data that we collect on the watch, plus the data during the registration process, all of that is correlated to a hospital admission. Using real-time predictive analytics, we could identify high-risk patients for an intervention that can reduce hospital admissions. And that's where we see this going. We see a complete transition of technology in the marketplace with medical alert devices going into these new areas, much like what happened with Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia. They need to adopt the new technology or they're going to lose their market share.
Thank you so much. Dr. Riot, let me turn that over to you. As a physician, what do you see as the advantages of telemedicine here?
Well, first of all, telemedicine has existed for a long time, but obviously COVID has put it at the forefront. You can't come in to see your doctor anymore. So how much of this can be done at home? So, just listening to what Daniel has said, in my mind, it's already worrying, the idea that, let's just say you came in with a medical alert bracelet, whether it's something that's on a phone or whatever. If you have an RFID chip, they can just tap onto something that the physician has in their office. Now you're automatically auto-populating everything that that patient ever had in their entire medical history, their current medications, their most recent visits. I mean, that's much better and much more accurate than asking them hundreds of questions where they forget that they had this allergy or that. So, just listening to what Daniel has said, it's very exciting as a physician. So for me personally, COVID has been, horrifying from the kind of morbidity and mortality standpoint, but it's been very exciting on the technology aspect of things. Now, ophthalmology is a very special form of medicine where it is ripe for telemedicine and AI. We have really been leading the forefront when it comes to medicine over kind of a digital landscape, as well as using neural networks, because a lot of what we do is kind of pattern recognition. It's recognizing something that we see, and we do a lot of images in our profession. So I would say the idea of even doing home diagnostics is very big. So if we can measure someone's eye pressure at home, if we can measure their state of their retina at home, it'd be fantastic. Some of this stuff has been being done in these third world countries for years already. You have tiny adapters that you can put on your cell phone so that you can have a picture of their retina and it's sent 500 kilometers across the country so that, yes, you know what, this person should be seen, should travel to get treatment done. So I think telemedicine has basically taken what should have happened in 5 years and it's done it in less than 1 year.
Terrific. Mark, let me turn that over to you. Since you are live with this, with your COVID platform, give us your feelings on telemedicine and what you've heard so far.
And I think what's remarkable about COVID, and I mean, clearly it's a sort of a tragedy and sad, and it's sad that we're not having this conversation on the Magic Mountain. I'm physically outside in Hamburg being very, very cold, but trying to replicate the Davos experience by being freezing to death outside, because that's the only quiet place that we can get. But if we look at this, what I find fascinating with this COVID experience is that COVID has actually put healthcare consumption, so the consumption of a healthcare service, front and center of almost every single person on a near weekly basis, depending on which country you're in. That's not the case for normal healthcare. So just from a personal side, I mean, today, and I'm 51 years old, even though my human body is 51, my mental age is 12, because 12 is an awesome age. I just did a preventative medicine check, and I've had 12 bits of blood sample drawn, so that I can pretty much map out my whole healthcare for the next 30 years. That would never have occurred to me. And what I find fascinating is that what's happened with this COVID world is that it's done a number of things. First of all, it's meant that we can't socialize together. That means that we must have these conversations digitally, intermediated by a phone or a computer and internet. This means that things that we would only ever discuss in person, we now are forced to do virtually. So this means that this tele part now is becoming completely normalized. And as Jan said before, within months rather than decades. Next thing is that we're consuming health immediately, constantly, because we have no choice. So right now, I went to a restaurant and I needed to be triple vaccinated or double and tested. Otherwise, I couldn't go and eat food in an Italian restaurant. I'm in Germany. So this now means that all of a sudden we've had to institutionalize health and the consumption of health on a near immediate and regular basis, which is unheard of for the majority of people, unless you have a chronic disease such as diabetes or something else. So I think the need is there, the experience is there. The other thing, what I find almost sort of fantastical, just let's say not necessarily how bad the current system is, but let's phrase it better, how many opportunities there are to make it better. And also, and Jazz again mentioned this, that if we look on a global basis, for a variety of reasons, people in Africa, let's say, don't have access to great ophthalmologist experts. But if you're able to connect with somebody that is an expert, what we're able to do is we're able to use the world as technologists, which is what sort of almost in healthcare we're talking about, use the world as a test bed for different types of experience, but then we can bring it back to the to almost sort of the masses, the global population, to then improve healthcare experiences for everybody, which should hopefully lead and expected to lead for better healthcare outcomes for many, many people, which will leave a better quality of life for longer.
Thank you so much for that perspective. Steve, you have, of course, an amazing background. And you've obviously been in the White House advising directly on science and technology. What are your thoughts on telemedicine, and how do you see these giant steps that we've taken?
Well, thanks. Let me, I'll first relate it. I'll couch my comments in relating it even more specifically to not just the COVID-19 pandemic, but ongoing directionally moving towards a global endemic, which of course we'd like to get to as soon as possible. But I will share that my work in this field dates back for several decades, but during the 2001 to 2009 timeframe, in my role as a senior advisor in a George W. Bush White House, and subsequent additional advisory panel to the Obama White House, similar capacity. Our focus was on, immediately after 9/11, on dealing with the potential for very widespread, both man-made as well as natural pandemics and biological warfare. That actually led to a large part of the US response that is in place over the last several years, and completion of the Human Genome Project and the National Nanotechnology Initiative, which we shepherded to help create the underlying enabling technologies. Now, let me bring it forward to where we are today. And I bring those up because it often takes 10, 20, or 30 years for these foundational technologies and scientific developments to move mainstream. And I agree with the other comments that, you know, the crucible of COVID has created a massive compression algorithm to bring things forward immediately in the last 2 years that were trends that were clearly moving rapidly in a 5 to 8 to 10 year time frame. What I think is going to be most profound that is a blend of roots in telemedicine, telehealth, and just ongoing pandemic and endemic management is this. We have to have a way to detect, monitor, and protect from pathogen-led outbreaks, be they something as severe as COVID-19 and its variants, which is a coronavirus-based mechanism, which we have had before with SARS-1, with Ebola, with MERS, and Zika, and other coronavirus-based organisms. We have had this with other viral outbreaks, envelope and non-envelope-based viruses. Same thing with bacterial, and so I think that the technology moving towards a real-time closed loop, if you will, of being able to sense, detect, analyze, and then either vaccinate and or treat pathogen-led outbreaks is a specific area of ongoing connected health, telehealth, global health, involving both government as buyers and users, as well as entrepreneurs and private industry, because this really is a vast area that has just broken open in these last 2 years. And if you think about right now that you're receiving virtually 100% of the doses of COVID vaccines and boosters in the world through a needle, a vial, and a shot, that is like saying that you're going to watch your Netflix today or use your internet with at best 300 baud modem connected, and perhaps offline to online. No streaming video, no live content, no updates, no personalization. And that is a gap that can only be filled by some version of this telehealth, telemedicine in a pandemic format. That's going to mean genomic sequencing at source of measurement, which is in the person. It's going to be the laboratory becomes the world instead of taking samples of the world to send to a laboratory. It means taking genomic sequences of variants and weaving that into very rapid updates of vaccines and therapeutics. So that's what I see as the immediacy, the requirement, the need in the world, and how it relates back to the underlying, underpinnings of telemedicine.
Thank you so much. Everybody has kind of touched on a subject, and we're running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to ask for everyone to give a 1.5 minute response to this. When we talk about telemedicine, obviously the frontier is AI and diagnostics, not just through remote monitoring, but now bringing in AI into it, so that the diagnosis and does AI become the new emergency medical technician? So we'll start with you, Jess, and give me your concept on AI as a diagnostic tool for remote telemedicine.
Very quickly, at the end of the day, AI and telemedicine is not the panacea of perfection, period. They say it's the art of medicine for that reason. It's an art. You can't have a computer make a Mona Lisa, for example. There is an essence and soul there. Frankly, half my patients that come see me sometimes are not really here for a problem. They want to be reassured. So the psychosocial aspect of the biopsychosocial approach to medicine may not be there in AI. I don't think you can see a robot consoling somebody to say, hey, by the way, you have a diagnosis of blindness. So I would say at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said about AI that we already know, but there's still a lot more that can be done.
Thank you. Steve, if I can have you just a brief moment.
Yeah, AI, again, related to my prior comments, is going to be background, not foreground. It's going to be a heavy lifting engine doing billions and billions and billions of processing and machine learning. That's where it's going to be most useful. So let's look at several billion images of spike proteins and coronavirus binding as they change across variants, and it will be very useful. But it's going to take still 1 or 2 generations of technology before we move it front and center for human interaction.
Thank you. Mark?
So I think what's interesting, so I actually looked at applying AI to COVID, and it turns out that the world of COVID is so varied in terms of, so classic machine learning just really, really struggles with doing it accurately enough. What is more interesting, particularly in the telehealth context, is that we live in a global place, particularly with the internet, and therefore the 20% of doctors that are unemployed in Nigeria could easily be working on other things. The lack of specialists in New York, the lack of specialists in Munich could be satisfied by places where there are tons of specialists, but they have no income. So I think that telehealth is a way of, I mean, AI is extremely important and supports, and it helps in many ways. And we haven't even sort of explored all of the ways that it can be done. However, there is almost an essential human aspect to it that shouldn't be neglected. And I think is actually facilitated by this.
Thank you so much. Daniel, your thoughts?
Yeah, this actually is a sweet spot for us. And we had a meeting with CMS on this very topic. If you think about the data that we are able to collect, daily activity, sedentary time, hourly heart rate, medications and corresponding adherence rates, ECG, blood oxygen. By the way, blood oxygen, we could identify possibly COVID-19 if it's very low. Blood pressure, BMI. Well, all of this data is correlated to a hospital admission. So we believe with AI, we'll be able in real time to append risk levels for hospitalizations so that a clinician can intervene and lower the rate of hospital admission. So we see AI as a very important part of what we'd like to do going forward.
I have one question on, if you don't mind, Anand, on responsibility and ethics behind this. So what do we do about misreporting, tampering with the device, anything that a patient can do at home and then send false information?
So in reality, that's a big concern. And myself and actually Professor Jamie Cooper, we've battled this notion. You know, at the end of the day, if an AI program misdiagnoses you, who's at fault? Is it the company? Is it the program? Or is it the physician who used the program? So there's a lot of questions that have not been answered yet. And it's a very valid question. So as we kind of wade into these, deep waters, we'll have to answer these types of questions. But it's a fantastic question.
Daniel, your thoughts?
Well, I think we're all on the same page here. It all has to do with the collection of health data. And the more we could make that easy to collect, in our view, wearables is a way to go on that, the better we'll be able to use that data to improve patient outcomes. And that's where we see things going. Okay.
Steve, would you like to address that?
Yeah, briefly, I would just say, look, that it's a great question, Annika. The ethics and bioethics involved here, again, a very fast-moving field is tricky, and I think sunlight is the best disinfectant still, and so is transparency. And I think that the best thing to have is to have visibility in any of these new therapeutics, these new treatments, these new technologies and new techniques, because people have got individually and collectively a strong BS meter, and letting the visibility be there, people can judge for themselves and apply ethical standards.
Excellent. Mark, your thoughts?
So I'm at the sharp, pointy end of this. So the NHS have found that 40% of people, like on 40% of the times that people do self-tests of COVID, which are really, really simple to do, people make a mistake. Now, there is this sort of, the intent of the question is almost, let's say, how much of this mistakes are malicious? Relatively few times. More people make a mistake because they just don't know what to do or they're running out of time. But it does make a real problem because we assume that we're getting data and actionable data and supporting evidence-based medicine out of people doing things. However, when people do things by themselves and they're not expert in it, they are likely to make mistakes. And I think this does give us just a methodological problem that we need to cope with, is that we're just assuming that the data stream we have coming in is correct. And yet, for all we know, the Fitbit that is providing the great data stream has been provided, given over to somebody else to say, make some data for me. I don't want to do my running today.
That's so true.
At least with my video testing system, I know that if you say that it's you, I check that it's you, and I watch it coming out of your nose and going onto the thing. But I just know in practice, humans are tricky creatures. I mean, I love humans desperately, but they're tricky. You wouldn't trust them with money or a COVID test.
That's a very interesting perspective. When it comes down to looking at just the advancement we've had, it seems like we've taken leaps and bounds, but yet we see all of these gaps that I suppose are somewhat addressed, but then somewhat not so addressed. So we look forward to a bright future where, in contrast to what you have to say, Mark, what I will say is we'll hope that human beings will aspire to be better creatures and and provide the right data so that we can continue the advances that we see. Certainly, the advances in rural areas, in countries that in the absence of telehealth would have no access to healthcare. Certainly telehealth is a godsend, as Jess had said before. But yes, if it comes down to drug testing for addicts, yes, we see a dichotomy here that certainly there might be some behavior that could not be trusted. So I thank everyone for getting onto the panel today. It has been educational, I hope, for most everybody. We'd love to continue this discussion going into the future and perhaps next year.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
And hopefully in the summer in person in Davos.
Absolutely, and then we can enjoy the cold in a different way.
Exactly. Then the cold will be the chilled ice cubes in our drinks.
There you go. Cheers to that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Brian. Thank you for hosting. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.